So I wanted to talk about starting the new year off with God. And, you know, the year ended really on a beautiful note for us. Adonia shared a little bit about this end of the year workshop for the teenagers. And it was such a beautiful experience. You know, she mentioned just briefly, but we were here for 3 hours or so, something like that, on Tuesday night. And there was so many tears. There was so many tears from the teenagers and from the parents. It's very rare I think in the society today to see parents and children sharing their appreciation for one another. Of course, we all know we have shortcomings, right? And we can dwell on those shortcomings, but it's really beautiful to take the time to share what I appreciate about my kids and for our kids to share what they appreciate about us. It was surprising. I was surprised by some of the things that were shared, and pleasantly surprised. And it was a really nice way for our family to end the year. And I'm just very grateful for all the staff, especially Anissa and Yana, who worked so hard to make it possible and to make it happen. I know that every year when this time of year rolls around, people have mixed feelings. Some people are excited about the year, and they're ready to just excited, to see what's going to happen, see what God's going to do. It's like, oh, this is my year, this is the year I'm going to make that thing happen or whatever. And some people maybe feel a little bit discouraged. It's a new year, but nothing really changed in my life. What's the point? It's not really meaningful. And some people are just kind of indifferent. It's just another year. It's another day, Not even everybody celebrates New Year on the same day. So why is it a big deal? So I know a lot of people have a lot of different feelings. I think that in the last number of years of my life, I've probably experienced all of those many times, as I'm sure a lot of you have. So I want to talk about that a little bit, and I want to talk about Abraham today in my New Year's message. And I want to start off by just reading a little bit about Abraham's story from Genesis. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you." Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I go and the boy over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father." "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them went out together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me. So, by today's standards, this story seems a little bit barbaric. The idea that God would ask somebody to sacrifice their son, like an animal, to appease God because God was testing him. That definitely doesn't resonate well with us, I think, in today's modern age. But it's very important that we understand these stories in the Bible. Most Christians overlook these stories. They know they're important, but they don't really understand why. And a lot of people tend to focus only on certain things, like they tend to only focus on Jesus. We tend to do similar things in our own church, where we will focus only on maybe divine principle or only on true parents. But in order for us to understand the mission and foundation of Jesus and our true parents, we have to understand the backstory. You can call it the origin story. And we have to understand, too, that the story of Abraham is actually such a critical story in the Bible. All three Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all originated from Abraham. I looked it up this morning, 2.17 billion people. Over half the people in this world. Faith originated in this story that we're reading about this morning. So there's a lot that can be learned about how God works, even if this story maybe doesn't seem right by today's standards. So I want to take a minute to share what the divine principle says about Abraham and this story. When Abraham was prepared to slay his son, even the son of the promise, he demonstrated utmost loyalty to heaven. This act of faith was tantamount to Abraham killing himself, a self which had been defiled by Satan due to his earlier failure in the symbolic offering. Accordingly, when God saved Isaac from death, Abraham was also resurrected to life, now loosed from all the ties with which Satan had bound him when his symbolic offering was defiled. Furthermore, Abraham and Isaac attained inseparable oneness in their fidelity to God's will. Though Isaac and Abraham were two different individuals, when God brought them back to life, they became as one person in the sight of God. Even though the dispensation through Abraham had failed and was prolonged through Isaac, as long as Isaac succeeded, Isaac's victory would become Abraham's own victory. Therefore, God would be able to regard Abraham as not having failed and the dispensation as not having been prolonged. It is not clear how old Isaac was when Abraham offered the boy as a sacrifice. He was old enough to carry the wood for the sacrifice, and when he saw there was no lamb to be offered, he inquired of his father about it. Isaac was apparently old enough to understand his father's intentions. We can infer that he helped his father, even though he knew that his father was preparing to offer him as a sacrifice. If Isaac had resisted his father's attempt to offer him as a sacrifice, God definitely would not have accepted the offering. In fact, Isaac demonstrated a faith as great as that of Abraham. Together, their faith made the offering successful, and there was no way for Satan to retain his hold on them. In making the offering, Isaac and Abraham underwent a process of death and resurrection. As a result, two things were accomplished. First, Abraham succeeded in the separation of Satan, who had invaded him because of his mistake in the symbolic offering. Remember, earlier in Genesis, God had asked Abraham to offer a heifer and a lamb and two doves and these animals together, and he fell asleep before finishing. He restored through indemnity the position he had occupied before he had made the mistake and transferred his providential mission to Isaac from this restored position. Second, by faithfully obeying God's will, Isaac inherited the divine mission from Abraham and demonstrated the faith which qualified him to make the symbolic offering. So there's a lot more. There's a lot more that in the Bible and also in the divine principle about that, but just to kind of set the foundation here. We have to understand that earlier in this part, this story, some of you may know, some of you, this might be a little bit new or need a refresher, but God had promised Abraham a son. And Abraham and his wife were so old, and they were like, God, we are too old, we can't have kids. But God had promised him a son, and God had said, your child will bring forth descendants that will be greater than the number of stars in the sky. And so that eventually happened. It was like a miracle. And then later on, God asks him to sacrifice that son. It doesn't make sense. And from the perspective of Abraham, that must have seemed like such an unreasonable thing. God, why would you make this promise to me? Why would you fulfill this miracle that I've been asking for? Why would you give me a son and say I'm going to have descendants greater than all the stars in the sky? And then you ask me to sacrifice him. Obviously, if I have no son, I have no descendants. Basically, he's saying, God, why are you going back on your word? Or he could have, but he didn't. At least it's not written down anywhere. Maybe he struggled, I would think. So one of the things that we understand through the lens of the divine principle, looking at the stories in the Bible, is that God doesn't do things haphazardly for no reason, just to test people, just to on a whim or something like that. God has a reason for all the things that he does. And it helps us when we understand, when we read the Bible through the lens of the divine principle, then we understand, okay, Abraham, he wasn't able to finish his first offering. And so God had to ask him to make a greater offering the second time. God had a reason for asking Abraham to make this sacrifice. There was a condition that Abraham had to make. Of course, now we know Abraham and Isaac had to make the condition together. And it kind of, it's important for us to understand this, because when we look at our own lives, maybe we have things that we want. Maybe we feel God made promises to us of things that we hope to see in our life. And maybe some of those things panned out, maybe some of those things didn't pan out. And it can be very easy, especially this time of the year, look back on the previous year or think back on the year to come. It can be sometimes a little discouraging. God, where are you in all of this? Where are you in the prayers and the promises and all the things that we have been through together? I'm sure Abraham thought the same thing. But Abraham demonstrated to us something really beautiful, which is the heart of surrender. There is not many greater conditions, not many greater ways that we can show God our devotion, our dedication, our filial piety, our love, than to be able to give up that which we hold to be precious. To be able to say to God that I'm willing to let go of this thing that's so important to me because I trust you. I believe in you. Your will, your desires, your hopes are more important to me than the things that I think are important. And so this is where we get this concept that we talk about sometimes in the church, which is to offer up your Isaac. Some of you may have heard that term. We don't use it a whole lot these days. But when we talk about offering up your Isaac, and it often comes in the new year, we talk about looking back at the father of faith. That's Abraham, right? The father of faith. And thinking, what do I hold on to in my life? What is my Isaac that God may be asking me to let go of? Or what is that thing that I could offer to God? Maybe holding me back a little bit. This is having the heart to offer our best to God. And the central figures, people like Abraham, people like Jesus, they were always asked to make the biggest sacrifices. They were always asked to give up things that I think that us, if we were asked to give up those things, would crush us, would be very difficult. This is the heart of those kinds of people for God. They were willing to let go of anything. But I think that even though we don't stand in that same position, aren't asked to make those same sacrifices, the same principles, the same concepts, the same lessons, they apply to us in our life as well. Many times people, when they achieve their dreams, it destroys them. They lose what's most important to them, and God knows that. We want money, we want recognition, we want fame, we want, all these things that people typically want. I don't know, maybe none of you want any of these things. But, a lot of the things that people typically want, right? I want, to be recognized. I want to be famous. I want to have so much money. I don't even know what to do with it all, Or, health. Health is a pretty good goal, I think. But sometimes people want to be healthy because they want to look good, so they can be like, attractive or, something like that. It can be kind of like an ego thing, right? But I think that many times we want things, and I don't know about you, but I have friends that they got what they wanted, and it only made them less happy. We can easily point to people, I guess, some of the wealthiest people in the world. And I think about, especially some of the people in the tech world, because I'm kind of a techie guy. Think about Jeff Bezos, right? The, founder of Amazon, and Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, and how much they have so much money that they could never possibly spend it all. And yet, but their families fell apart. Their families ruined. And I think to myself, which is harder? Which is more important? To be able to create a loving family or to make $1 billion? They're both hard, right? But if you had to give up one to get the other, I'm sure that was never the intention. It was never the expectation that things were going to turn out that way. But so many people have been ruined by money and power. People who I'm sure started off with very good intentions. So I'm sure that God must not be unaware of this reality. God can see that many times our own hopes and dreams are more for our own selfishness. They're for our own egos. They're for our own vanity. We want to look good. We want to look successful. We want to be recognized as being successful in the eyes of our friends and our family and the world. So I think that our motivation, our heart, our desire is important for God in order for him to work in our lives. It was important in the time of Abraham for God to be able to see Abraham's heart, not just through lip service, but through his own resolve, through his own. Because Abraham already demonstrated once that his own personal comfort came first in the first offering. And God really wanted to be able to work through Abraham and his family. And so he was able to give them a second chance. But Abraham had to be able to show that God's will was more important than his personal desires. Basically, he had to show God that his motivation was pure. His motivation was true. Sometimes we have to let go of our desires that maybe are tainted a little bit with selfishness in order for God to be able to actually work in that, for that desire. And it's not to say that we should let go of our hopes. I think that God gave us imagination. God gave us desires. God gave us passions that we could go and we could really want to create a beautiful family, that we could want to accomplish things with money, that we could want to learn and understand things, that we learn to create things. So it's not bad. But sometimes we have to take a step back to re-examine what's actually in our desires, what's actually in our motivation. I had an interesting experience with this. It's kind of been an ongoing experience for the last couple of years. You know, Adonia and I, Adonia and I, when we first became pastors, we really didn't like the idea of being paid by the church. But we were full-time pastors, and we kind of needed the money to live off of. But we didn't like it. So for a long time, we were looking for different ways to make money, with the hope that, you know, maybe someday we could not have to receive a salary from the church. That was our thinking. But we tried many things, and nothing panned out. Adonia had a Arbonne business, and I tried doing website development, and because that's something I did for a long time, building websites for people, maintaining them. A long time ago, this is before we became pastors, but I had a paintball business actually. I had a website where people could order paintball equipment, and then it would drop ship to their address. It was kind of cool for a little bit. I like paintballing a lot. We tried options trading for a bit. That also bombed. Pretty much, sometimes we made a little bit of money, sometimes we lost money, but basically nothing really materialized in the desires that we had. We also tried making some YouTube videos, get ad revenue and all these things. Nothing panned out. And at some point, we just kind of forgot about it. Then a couple years ago, I was thinking about this, and I think when you become a pastor, this is something you're never going to need to know, but if you become a pastor, there's a special exemption you can claim from the IRS, and you can say, okay, I as a pastor, I'm not going to be paying into Social Security. And they'll be like, okay, but you can't take it back. It's irrevocable, all right? So when we first came here, and we were young and in our 30s, and we were yeah, we're gonna do this, and someday we're gonna start a business, and we're gonna take the world by storm or whatever. And we did that. We filed this form, which is a one-page form, and they were okay, you don't have to pay into Social Security. And we're great, we're gonna save that money, and we're gonna use it, and we're gonna do something better with it. And then fast forward 10 years later, I was starting to really regret that decision. I'm oh my God, what are we gonna do? Because we don't have retirement through the church. There's not a retirement fund. And if we're not paying into Social Security, then I thought to myself, in our 70s, we're gonna have nothing. and I had a prayer. I don't know if this is out of order or in order or whatever. It's a couple years ago, so a little hazy. But I had a prayer with God, and I was thinking about this situation and how I was I don't want to be a burden on my kids, And I said to God, I don't know what's going to happen. We tried all these different things and it didn't pan out. I still believe in it, but I don't know how it's going to happen. But I said, I'm willing to accept that this may just be our path in life. And, if you need us to just focus on the church and growing the community, and, something will work out, I'm sure. And, but, I said, but if there's some way that we could maybe figure out something that works for us and our family, that would be great. It's kind of like a Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane moment. Like, your will be done, but if this could work, please allow it to happen. And so I had that prayer. It was a good prayer. Didn't expect anything. But I felt like it was a little bit of this Abraham moment of just surrender and offering this Isaac, which we had, this Isaac, which was that we wanted to be independent. We wanted to not have to, not only did we not want to have to take a salary from the church, but we wanted to be able to do something greater, like with money, to be the bigger donors, or help out in different ways. And but not everybody gets to live that life, so we were like, okay, who are we? And then a little bit later on, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but it was actually Julie, who's not here today, but she's actually the one who kind of got me going thrifting, which is something that I hadn't done in years and years. And at first we just did it for fun, but then I don't remember what happened. I saw some videos, or I had some ideas, and I was like, maybe one thing that I could do, since I kind of come from a long line of thrifters, I could try. Some people I see online, they are able to buy stuff, and then they from thrift stores, garage sales, et cetera, and they flip it online, and they can make good money that way. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll try that. And so that was about 1.5 years ago. And we started off just a little by little, just getting little things here, little things there, not running to risk too much money or get in too deep, and then started selling things. And then it ended up turning into an actual business, something that we could do on the side, besides, it doesn't take away from our pastoring life. I mean, it does take time and effort, but something we could do on the side that could help us financially. And it's not very glamorous. It's not like being a movie star, or like a social media influencer, or like a tech person or whatever, but somehow it seems to work well for us. And we were able to fulfill our first goal, which was to not have to rely on the church for our housing. And thank you, Justine. Which may not seem like a lot, but when you rely on the church for everything, then it's really hard to actually get out from that. It's really hard to voluntarily stop doing that. But we can't really take full credit either, because we did it together with my parents, and on our own, neither of us could have afforded a house, even though we had this eBay business that was doing okay. But somehow we were able to do it well together. And we have 2 goals with the business from here on. And one of the goals is to stop taking any salary from the church. And the trajectory that we're going on, we're pretty confident that we'll be able to do that within the next 1 or 2 years. And I'm saying that publicly, all of you, partly as accountability, because I don't want to take that back later on out of a desire to be comfortable, okay? But then number 2 is that we want to be the greatest, tithers to the community as well. So we were, for us, seeing this church become successful, that's what we are here for. That's what it all comes down to at the end of the day. And so if we can help with that, partly it's for us to be independent. Sorry, I know I'm rambling a little bit. But part of it is just to be independent, but part of it is that because we want to give back as well. And so those are our goals in the next couple of years. And I really feel that it's not us. I really feel that at the end of the day, it was because we could offer our Isaac to God. And that maybe that helped us to get maybe in the right direction. Maybe it's just timing. I've had a number of times where I was like, God, why couldn't this have happened 10 years ago? We didn't have to go through all those failed efforts. And we could probably be pretty well along now. But there's no point in going and thinking that way. It is what it is. And we're just grateful for what we have, and we don't know, it may not last. But it's working for us now, and that's just my little testimony of how I feel like offering up Isaac's, offering up our desires to God with a willingness to let go if necessary, but also like was not a bad dream. Was not a bad dream. And I think most of our dreams are good dreams. Most of the things that we want in life are good things. And that God would like to help you to have the thing that you want in your life. But sometimes we have to make that extra effort. Sometimes we have to make those extra conditions. As we know, God can't just do everything for us. God can't just make our dreams come true. So as we come to this new year, I think that the one thing that I would say to encourage you, if you haven't done so already, I know it's past the new year, so maybe this is too late, but maybe not. If you haven't done so already, I would encourage you to have an honest conversation with God about where you're at, what your hopes are, and to offer that to God. See what happens. Please join me in prayer. Dearest Heavenly Parent, we are so humbled at the ways in which you, despite our shortcomings, despite sometimes our turning our backs on you, how you never falter, you never stop. You're always looking for ways into our lives. You are always continuing your work in this world, Heavenly Parent, never stopping, never ending, never giving up on your beautiful ideal that you created us for. And you're never going to stop until it's created, Heavenly Parent. And we're just grateful, Heavenly Parent, that we get glimpses of that in our life here and there. We're grateful, Heavenly Parent, that to have loving people, to have people that express your love in many different ways. We're grateful, Heavenly Parent, we see your guiding hand in so many things. And Heavenly Parent, as we go into this new year, I pray that we can go into this new year with you. That we don't run away, we don't avoid, Heavenly Parent, we want you to be in our life in this new year, Heavenly Parent, and going forward. Please guide us. Please help us to see the ways in which you are moving in our lives. And please help us to have the humility and the spirit of Abraham to put you first, to offer everything to you, even those things that are very important to us. We know that doesn't come with any guarantees, Heavenly Parent, but we also know that you are looking for those children, your sons and daughters here on this earth, Heavenly Parent, that are wanting to live with you, wanting to go your way. And I know that if we can have that kind of a heart and that kind of an attitude, Heavenly Parent, you will work in our lives for our betterment and for this world's betterment, Heavenly Parent. We have so much to be grateful for, Heavenly Parent. And I pray that we as a community and as families here, Heavenly Parent, we can walk in humility with you. We offer this time, we offer this prayer and service up to you on behalf of all our blessed families here. Amen and Aju. Thank you.